April 1241. At the head of nearly 75,000 men, Batu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan and cousin of Kublai, led the western branch of the Mongol Empire into Europe. On April 9, 1241, at the Battle of Liegnitz in Poland, his armies crushed the European coalition forces. Just days later, on April 11, 1241, they destroyed the Hungarian army at the Battle of Mohi. Their advance did not stop there. The Mongol troops crossed into the Holy Roman Empire. Christian Europe held its breath. So far, nothing seemed able to stop them. Later, in 1246, Batu Khan sent a letter to Pope Innocent IV, demanding his total submission, even ordering him to surrender, or, according to some accounts, to take his own life. For many Europeans, these invaders from the east were not just warriors. They were the horsemen of the apocalypse, the peoples of Gog and Magog foretold in the Holy Scriptures. And then, suddenly, everything stopped. The Mongol campaign ended. The riders turned back and returned to the steppes of Central Asia. Before the Mongol horses trampled the plains of Poland and Hungary, there had already been words, messengers, letters. In the 1240s, during the time of the Crusades, the Christians of the West had already heard of this people from the East. Some princes even saw a unique opportunity to trap the Muslim world from both sides. The Crusaders on one, the Mongols on the other. But the Khan's replies were brutal. In 1246, the great Khan Guyuk sent a letter to Pope Innocent IV. It was not an offer of alliance, but a demand for total submission, ordering the Pope and the kings of Europe to kneel or suffer the consequences. And in the middle of this tension, two figures stood out. Batu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan and cousin of the great Kublai, received the mission to lead the expansion westward. At his side, the military genius Subotai, veteran of Genghis Khan's conquests, a feared strategist who had already led more than 20 victorious campaigns. In 1236, the order was given. The West was to be struck. Batu and Subotai gathered a massive army, nearly 75,000 horsemen, heirs to the drive of conquest begun by Genghis Khan. Their goal was clear: to subdue the Christian kingdoms, punish those who had supported Rus, and open Europe to Mongol domination. In January 1241, the armies crossed the Carpathians. The invasion of Europe had begun. In the winter of 1237, Mongol banners appeared on the frozen plains of the east. Batu and Subotai launched their great offensive against the principalities of Rus, Slavic states descended from Kiev, but already divided by rivalries. The first to fall was the Principality of Ryazan. In December 1237, the city was besieged and burned. Its walls collapsed after only 5 days of resistance. It was the signal. The Russian lands were now open to invasion. In January 1238, the Mongols marched north. The powerful city of Vladimir was taken and sacked on February 7, 1238. Grand Prince Yuri II fled north, but was caught and killed at the Battle of the Sit River on March 4, 1238. This defeat marked the end of one of the last major centers of resistance. The Mongols burned and looted, leaving behind a landscape of ruins. They pushed as far as the outskirts of Novgorod, but the forests and the spring thaw slowed them down. The great northern city escaped destruction, for now. 2 years later, the horde returned to strike the final blow. On December 6, 1240, Kiev fell, once called the mother of Russian cities. After a brutal siege, the walls collapsed, the population was massacred, and the spiritual capital of Rus was reduced to ashes. The road to the west now lay open. Poland and Hungary knew the storm was coming. In March 1241, the Mongol armies struck Poland to draw its knights away from Hungary. On March 18th, at the Battle of Chmielnik, the Polish forces were destroyed. On April 9th, at the Battle of Liegnitz, Duke Henry II the Pious, supported by German knights and Templars, tried to resist, but the coalition collapsed. Henry was killed on the battlefield. Poland was devastated, but the Mongols paid a heavy price. European cavalry inflicted serious losses, and every stone fortress slowed their advance. They won, but with blood. The true target was Hungary. King Bela IV gathered his knights and feudal contingents to block their path. On April 11th, 1241, came the Battle of Mohi. Subotai set a deadly trap. He lured the Hungarian army toward a bridge, then encircled them with hidden forces. Mongol archers filled the sky with arrows, while heavy cavalry struck from the flanks. The Hungarians were overwhelmed, but the victory was costly. Hungarian knights, clad in chainmail and armed with heavy lances, fought fiercely. In the first hours, they broke through Mongol lines several times, forcing Batu to commit his reserves. Medieval sources report that tens of thousands of Hungarians perished, and that Mongol losses reached about 10,000 men, an enormous number for an army used to winning quickly with few casualties. Hungary lay open, pest burned, the countryside was ravaged. But the stone castles could not be taken quickly. The winter of 1241 to 1242 left the steppe warriors stuck, worn down by sieges, losses, and hunger. After Russia, Poland, and Hungary, Batu and Subotai's armies reached the edges of the Holy Roman Empire. But progress became harder. Already exhausted by months of constant campaigns, the Mongols now faced a different world. A world where Western chivalry was at its height. German knights were heavily armed, protected head to toe by chainmail and steel helmets. They fought in tight formations, supported by countless stone fortresses that dotted Central Europe. Unlike the wide-open plains of Russia or Hungary, here every valley and every walled town became a fortress. The Mongols raided Silesia, Moravia, and even the outskirts of Austria. But no decisive battle came. Here they were no longer facing scattered enemies, but the very heart of Christian Europe, where the roads converged toward Rome, toward Paris, toward the strongholds of the faith. For the first time, the Mongol advance truly slowed. Weakened by losses and facing a more organized resistance, their momentum broke at the gates of the Holy Roman Empire. And then, suddenly, everything stopped. In the spring of 1242, the Mongol armies turned their horses and rode back east. After campaigning in Poland, fighting in Hungary, and reaching the doors of the empire, their advance came to an end. The Mongols kept their plans in strict secrecy, and still today, historians struggle to explain why Batu Khan turned back. Several theories are offered. The most common explanation is political. The great Khan Ogodei had died in December 1241, and the princes were recalled to elect his successor at the Kurultai, the great Mongol assembly. Yet doubts remain. How could a messenger have crossed the thousands of kilometers from Mongolia to Hungary in less than 4 months? And Batu himself had little reason to return, since the election would likely favor his rival, Uyuk, Ogodei's son. Others point to geography. Each warrior needed around 5 horses, nearly 375,000 mounts for Batu's army of 75,000 men. They required endless pastures. Europe's lands, they say, could not support such numbers. Yet this argument has limits. The Hungarian plain could feed millions of horses. Another theory suggests the Mongols never meant to conquer Europe fully. Their goal may have been to terrorize, to shatter, to prepare the way for a future invasion. Finally, the resistance of Central Europe should not be underestimated. Since 1236, the Mongols had crushed the Volga Bulgars and the Rus. But in Central Europe, they faced something stronger. Heavily armed knights, stone fortresses, and battlefields less suited to their fast-moving style of war. In the end, it is hard to know which explanation is true. Most likely, it was a mix of them all. What is certain is that the unstoppable momentum of the Mongol conquest broke at the gates of the West. Beyond the Holy Roman Empire lay the kingdom of the Franks, the very heart of Western feudal power. Here, chivalry was not a temporary force, but an institution, forged in the fires of the Crusades. At its head stood the young king Louis IX, the future Saint Louis. A pious ruler, but also a determined strategist, surrounded by the finest knights of France. This was no longer a matter of scattered duchies or weakened realms. This was the strongest face of Christian Europe. What would have happened if Batu Khan and Subotai had crossed the Rhine? Would the horsemen of the steppe have burned the Capetian kingdom, or would they have faced a resistance capable of breaking them? We will never know. But one thing is certain, it would have been an unprecedented clash. The greatest nomadic cavalry in history against the Frankish knights at the height of their power. Perhaps the greatest battle the world could ever have seen, but a battle that never took place.